Today we're going to go over page 15 and 16, 26 to 56 even. You don't have to do 42. It's 1.2 from the book. It's part 2. It's the homework that is due. All right, 26, we have h of x. Remember, h of x is just a fancy way to say y equals 4, x plus 1, x minus 6. Now in 26, we have to put it in standard form. That means we have to get rid of the parentheses. So the first thing you're going to have to do is you have to get rid of these parentheses. We're going to use FOIL. Sometimes I say double distributive property, whichever you remember the best. So it's FOIL or double distributive property. So x is going to go to x and give me x squared. X is going to go to negative 6, give me negative 6x. So that's multiplying. X times x is x squared. X times negative 6 is minus 6x. All right. Now 1. 1 is going to go to x, give me 1x. 1 is going to go to negative 6 and give me minus 6. Now the 4 is just going to drop down, so I get 4 right there. And the h of x is just going to drop down. Now I'm going to combine my like terms in the middle. So I'm going to get h of x, which drops down, 4, which drops down. I get x squared minus 5x minus 6. Now I have to distribute that 4. So I get h of x equals 4x squared minus 20x minus 24. Now it's in standard form because a is 4, b is negative 20, c is negative 24. And that's our solution. And that's all we have to do for 26. All right, 28. The first thing you have to do is you have to take the set of parentheses, you have to write it twice. Because you can't FOIL until you have 2 sets of parentheses. You are not allowed to take that little exponent 2 to both the x and the 5 because the plus sign's in the middle. And then the minus 2 is just going to drop down. And then the f of x is going to drop down. So now I'm going to FOIL. X goes to x goes to 5. So x times x is x squared. X times 5 is 5x. Now the 5 is going to go to x, and the 5 is going to go to 5. So 5 times x is another 5x. 5 times 5 is 25. The minus 2 is just going to drop down. The f of x is just going to drop down. Here are my like terms in the middle. I combine them. And because there's nothing in front of the parentheses just disappear. So I'm going to put x squared plus 10x plus 25, and then I subtract 2. These are like terms now. So my final answer is f of x equals x squared plus 10x plus 23. And just to double check, make sure it's standard form, we can find a, which is 1, b is 10, and c is 23. And that's it for 28. All right, so number 30, we have g of x equals negative, or the opposite of x plus 6 squared plus 10. Remember, the first thing we have to do is I have to take this parentheses and I have to write it twice. Notice the negative sign is not included with the parentheses. So I take that, I say x plus 6, x plus 6. The minus sign drops down. The plus 10 drops down. I didn't do any with the g of x, that also drops down. Now I'm going to FOIL. So x is going to go to x is going to go to 6. Remember, you're multiplying. So I get x times x is x squared. X times 6 is plus 6x. Now, I'm going to do 6 times x. 6 times 6. So I get plus 6x plus 36. The negative sign is going to drop down. It didn't do anything. G of x didn't do anything. Plus 10 didn't do anything. I'm going to combine my like terms in the middle. That turns into 12x. I have negative x squared plus 12x plus 36. The negative is going to distribute to everything. Remember, g of x didn't do anything. 10 also didn't do anything. Notice the negative sign does not go to the 10. So I end up with g of x equals negative x squared minus 12x plus 36. And look, the plus 10 drops down. Oh, and that should be minus 36. So my final answer should be g of x equals negative x squared minus 12x minus 26, where a is negative 1, b is negative 12, and c is negative 26. And that's it for 30. Alright, so 32, I'm going to square both f of x, or x and negative 1, so I get 12 x squared plus 1 plus 4. I'm going to distribute the 12, so I get fx equals 12x squared plus 12, and then the 4 just drops down. So I get f of x equals 12x squared plus 16. So now that I'm done, I have a is equal to 12, b is equal to 0, c is equal to 16. And that's it for 32. So remember, min or max value is the y part of the vertex. So the y part, that's going to be our min or max value. Now remember, a tells us if it's going to be min or it's going to be max. Remember, if you have a smiley face, and that means a is positive, you're going to have a min. If you have a frowny face, that means a is negative, you're going to have a max. And that's how you determine if you have a min or a max. So if you can find the vertex, you find the y value of it, and then you look at a. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find a, which is negative 4. Remember, that tells me that I have a frowny face, which tells me I'm going to have a max value at the end. H, negative 6. K is negative 12. And because it's in vertex form, I already know the vertex, negative 6, negative 12. And I know the max value is going to be this y. So my max value is just equal to negative 12. That's how easy it is in vertex form. Alright, so f of x equals 3 times the quantity x plus 10, x minus 8. So now it's in intercept form, so I still have to find a, which is 3, but now I have to find p, which is negative 10. Remember, they're hanging out with your x, we don't trust them. And q is positive 8, because once again, they're hanging out in a room with your x. So now that I have a, p, and q, a tells me that I have a smiley face graph, which at the end is telling me is going to have a min value. Now I have to find out the vertex, and the x value of the vertex is p plus q all over 2. So I do negative 10 plus 8 all over 2. I get negative 2 over 2, which is negative 1. This is not the value because it's x. So I have to plug negative 1 in for x right there and right there. So to find y, which is going to be my value, I say 3 times the quantity, negative 1 plus 10, negative 1 minus 8. I get 3 times negative 9 times, or positive 9 times negative 9, which is equal to negative 243. So my vertex is at negative 1, negative 243. That's my min value. So my min value is always the y part, negative 243. And that's it for 36. 38 is a little bit tougher because this is not vertex, intercept, or standard form. It's not vertex because there's no little exponent there. It's not intercept form because there's only one set of parentheses. And it's not standard form because it has a set of parentheses. So we have to I'm going to make it standard form. And to make it standard form, I'm going to distribute that negative 12x. So I get y equals negative 12x squared plus 108x. That's it. Now that it's in standard form, I'm going to say a is negative 12, which once again tells me it's a frowny face. And that tells me at the end I'm going to have a max value. B is 108. C is 0. Now remember, to find the vertex, you say x equals the opposite of b over 2a. Remember, if you're going to use your calculator, put 2a in parentheses. So the opposite of 108 all over 2 times negative 12. So I get negative 108 all over negative 24, which is going to be positive 4.5. So remember, this is the x. I need y. So I have my x value. I have my x value to be 4.5 of my vertex, but I need y. So I have to plug 4.5 in right there and right there. So I say y equals negative 12. Instead of x, I put 4.5. Instead of x, I put 4.5 minus 9. So I get negative 12 times 4.5 times negative 4.5. And that's going to give me positive 243. So that goes in there, and since that's the y, my max value is positive 243. And I'm done with 38. All right, number 40 is back to intercept form because I have two sets of parentheses, so it's intercept form. Now I have a equals 2, which tells me once again that it's going to be a smiley face, which means at the end I'm going to have a minimal value. P is positive 3, Q is positive 6. So now I'm going to do step 2 says I need to find the vertex. Remember, that's P plus Q all over 2. So I get 3 plus 6 all over 2. So I get x equals 4.5. Remember, that is x, so it's not my vertex, or it's not the y value of my vertex, which is the value. It is the x part, but I need a y. So I plug 4.5 in right there and right there. So I say y equals 2. Instead of x, I put 4.5 minus 3. Instead of y, I put 4.5 minus 6. I get 2 times 1.5 times negative 1.5. 2 times 1.5 is 3. 3 times negative 1.5 is negative 4.5. So that's my y value, and that means that's my minimum value. And that's it for 40. Alright, so 44, we have g of x equals negative 8, x plus 3.2, plus 6.4. So I know it's vertex form. So I say a is negative 8, h is negative 3.2, and k is 6.4. I already know my vertex is negative 3.2, positive 6.4. So that's the first thing on my XY chart. So I put negative 3.2. I'm actually going to just put negative 3 there, and then I'm going to put negative 2 there, because negative 3 is pretty close. All right. I don't have to plug in negative 3.2. I get 6.4. And I'm going to plug in negative 3 and negative 2. So I plug negative 3 into the calculator. I end up getting 6.08. Now I'm going to plug in negative 2. I plug in negative 2. I end up getting negative 5.12. All right, so now I'm going to make my graphs. I'm going to change my x scale. I'm going to make my x scale go by, we'll say half. So there's half, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. So there's negative 1, there's negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. All right. So negative 3.2, I'm going to go left 3, and there's 3.5, so we're going to say negative 3.2 is about right there. I'm going to go up 6.4. We'll say it's right there. Now that's where I put the dotted line in. Now I'm going to do negative 3. So I go over negative 3, I go 6.08. It's about right there. It's really close to that dotted line, so I'm just going to go about that same distance right there. And there's my second dot. I'm going to go negative 2, negative 5.12. Go 1, 2, and a little bit. There's a little bit. 1, 2, we'll say it's about right there. Remember, it has to be a U, so I make that a U. And that's pretty much the best I can do. It's not too bad. I mean, it's pretty bad, but it's alright. That's good enough. That's it. Alright, so 46. Same concept. It is vertex form. Because there's one set of parentheses, squared. So that means they tell me I have A equals negative 2/3. Which I've made the frowny face. H is positive 1/2. K is just positive 4/5. So I make my XY chart. I already know the vertex is 1/2. 4/5. So that's my first thing, 1/2, and then 4/5. I'll put 1 on there because that's really close to half, and I'll put 2 on there. I'm going to go by halves on my X scale. There's 1, there's 2, 3, 4. And you could remember the negatives are the same thing. I'm going to plug in 1. So I plug in 1 for x. I get x minus 1. It's a half. A half squared is 1/4. 1/4 times negative 2/3 is negative 1/6. And then I add 4/5. It's going to end up being 19/30. You should probably know that's pretty close to 0.6. It's 0.63 repeating. So it's about 0.6. And if you don't know, 4/5 is exactly 0.8. Just so you have a general idea of how this is going to be graphed. Now I'm going to do 2. I'm going to plug in 2. 2 minus 1/2 is 1.5. So when I plug in 2, I end up getting negative negative 7/10. Which, if you didn't know, it's exactly negative 0.7. So I'm going to make my y's go by tenths. So this is 0.8 or 8/10. Now I'm going to graph it. So I'm going to go 1/2, which is really easy, up to 8/10. See how easy that is to find? That's why I made the scale the way I did. Now 1's really easy to find. Go over 1. Now I'm going to go up 19/30 or negative or 0.63. So there's, I'm going to go a little bit above 0.6, and then I'm going to go 1 block away and go right there. Now I'm going to do negative 7/10, which is really easy. So I go over 2, I go down to negative 7/10. I'm 1, 2, 3 blocks away. 1, 2, 3 blocks away. Now I make my U. And that's it for 46. Alrighty, so I have intercept form, remember, because of the 2 sets of parentheses. So I have A is 5/2, P is going to be positive 4/3, Q is going to be positive 2/5. So now I have to find the x value of the intercept, so I say x equals P plus Q, so I have 4/3 plus 2/5 all over 2. 4/3 plus 2/5. When I plug that in my calculator, or I just do it in my head, 4/3 and 2/5 is 26/15, and I divide that by 2 or multiply by 1/2, and I get 13/15. Alright? So I have my XY chart. 13/15? That's alright. I'm not really worried about it. It's going to be in the middle. I'm going to put 4/3 up top. I'm going to put 2/5 below. I already know 4/3 and 2/5 is 0, so the only one I have to plug in is 13/15. So that one gets really messy when you plug in 13/15. You get negative 49/90. But that's okay, because really I'm That's really close to 1/2. It's really close to negative 1/2. All right. So I'm going to make this go by quarters to make this a little bit easier. So there's 1. There's 2 because 4/3 is 1.3 repeating. 13/15 is 0.86 repeating. And 2/5 is 0.4. So 0.86 is a little bit like halfway between 0.75 and 0. So I'm going to go and 1. I'm going to put that first. So I'm going to put 13/15. I'm going to go down negative 1/2. I'm going to make these go by fourths too. So there's negative 1. There's negative 2. So I'm going to go negative 0.86. I'm going to go down to about a little bit lower than negative 1/2 right there. So that's our vertex. I'll put my dotted line through there. All right. Now I'm going to do 4/3, which is like 1 1/3, so it's like kind of right there. And then with 2/5, which is 0.4, which is like kind of right here. And it looks pretty close in between. So now I put my graph, boom, and we're done with 48, and that's it. So although it was kind of hard to get all these points, it wasn't that hard to graph. I just had to estimate and make it look the best. So 50 is actually kind of tough because you have to put it in standard form, and it's hard without the numbers being there. So there's actually 2 parts. So we'll say this is 50 part 1, and I'm gonna write that twice. So I'm gonna say y equals a, x minus h plus k. Now I have to FOIL x minus h. I have to FOIL that, or double distribute. So I get y equals a x squared minus 2xh, which I'm going to rewrite that, 2hx plus h squared, and then k is just hanging out there. I have to distribute the a to everything. So you get y equals ax squared minus 2ahx plus ah squared plus k. Now that is actually going to be my c, because I know they don't have any letters. There's no x's. This is going to be my b, and that's going to be my a. So I have a, b, and c, and they wanted you to find the vertex. And this is how they proved that the vertex in vertex form is just h. I plug in the opposite of b, so I could plug in 2ah all over 2 times a. Those cancel out to give you h, so that's actually how they proved it. Alright, now we're going to move on to 50 part 2. 50 part 2 says use intercept form and do the same thing. Put it in a standard form, and then do the vertex formula for standard form to see if you can prove p plus q over 2 is equal to x. So I have to FOIL this right here. I get y equals a x squared minus xp minus xq plus pq. So that's just FOIL. I'm going to distribute. Well, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to say, look, they both have a minus, or they both have an x in column, minus and an x in column. You could say it's in common. Actually, right now, I'll just distribute it for right now. So a is going to go to everything. So ax squared minus apx, I'm just going to write x last, minus aqx plus apq. Now this isn't in standard form because it's got 2 b's. Can't have 2 b's. So I'm going to do a little trick. This is the hardest part of this one. I'm going to say, look, they both have an x in common. So I'm going to pull out that x. So I'm going to rewrite it. Y equals, I'm going to leave ax squared alone, but look, I'm going to take these 2 x's, I'm going to pull them out in common. And then inside the parentheses is minus ap minus aq. That's like factoring out the common term. It makes a big deal in this problem because now I have an a, b, and a c. So a is a, see right there. B is actually this entire set, so b is actually negative ap minus aq, and c is apq. So if I do x equals the opposite of b over 2a, well, the opposite of b is positive ap plus positive aq all over 2 times a is just a. And now I notice they all have a's in common, so all the a's cancel. So actually this does turn out to p plus q over 2, and that's the proof that 50 works. 52 gave you this problem. Y equals negative 0.016 x minus 52.5 squared plus 45. I know the vertex is 52.5, 45. Remember, the vertex is the middle. So I know, in this, because it's in vertex form, I know my graph's going to look something like this. The vertex right here is 50.5. Now remember, this is a bridge. This length from here to here is 52.5, and it's cutting in the middle. So this is the same as this. So find the length of the bridge. It's equal to 52.5 plus 52.5. So my actual length of the bridge is just 105 meters, and that's it. That's it. 54 has two things. They have y equals negative 0.5 x minus 6 squared plus 18. Y equals 1.17 x minus 6 squared plus 42. He said, what affects the height? Now, in my opinion, k affects the height the most. Because if I flip the k's, they would change the heights of those parabolas. The other thing that affects the height, a could change from a max to min if you make it positive. So that will also affect our max height. But in this problem, I think k. So a and k affect the height. All right, so 56 is talking about a flying fish, and they want to know, they want you to write a quadratic function that models the flight. So they're telling you that the horizontal distance, that the distance of the flight at this distance is 33 feet. So if I cut that in half, that would give me my vertex. So half of 33, oh wait, hold on. Yeah, it says the maximum height is reached after 33 feet. So this is 33 feet, and the whole thing is 66 feet. So I know that's my x value of my vertex, or in other words, h. I know the height is 5. In other words, that's k. So if I write this out, I know y equals, I don't know a yet, but I know x minus 33 squared plus 5. Now, I also know 0, 0 has to work because they told us that. So I plug 0 in there, and I plug 0 in there. And really, to find this out, I just solve for y, or solve for a, because that's the only one I don't know. So I get 0 equals a, 0 minus 33 squared plus 5. So I have to get rid of the a. I have to get a by itself. So I'm going to subtract 5 first. So I get minus 5 equals, and at the same time I'm going to square 33. Get a times 1089. I divide 1089 on both sides. It gives me a equals negative 5 over 1089. So that's my a. So my actual equation is y equals negative 5 over 1089 x minus 33 squared plus 5. That's it for 56, and we're done.